"You will leave Greyhaven through the servants' door, Miss Evelyn, because no guest of consequence should be forced to watch Charity dressed in borrowed silk." Lady Drusilla Grey stood beneath the ballroom chandelier with one gloved hand resting upon the arm of her son. Her voice had not risen. It did not need to. The musicians had already stopped. Across the polished floor, more than 100 faces turned toward Evelyn Marlowe. Some belonged to titled families. Some belonged to wealthy men who had purchased the manners of gentlemen along with their London houses. All of them had heard the insult. Several women lowered their fans to hide their smiles. A young baronet near the supper room laughed aloud. Evelyn felt the blood leave her face. The gown she wore had belonged to her late mother. Its pale blue silk had been altered twice, then carefully pressed by Evelyn herself, because Lady Drusilla had refused to allow the housemaids to assist her. It was not borrowed. It was one of the last things Evelyn possessed. Yet no one asked. No one except the old butler. Mr. Alden took one step forward from the line of servants near the wall. He had served Greyhaven for 42 years. His back had bent with age, and one hand trembled against the silver tray he carried, but his voice remained clear. Miss Evelyn was invited by his grace. A deeper silence fell. Then Lord Percival Grey, Lady Drusilla's son, gave a careless smile. "My uncle is in London, Alden. He cannot be expected to remember every small kindness he once extended to dependents." Laughter moved through the room again. Not loud laughter. That would have been vulgar. It came in little breaths behind fans, in lowered voices, in the soft turning of heads. It was the laughter of people who believed cruelty became harmless when delivered elegantly. Evelyn looked toward the great doors. She could have bowed and left. She had learned to retreat before others saw how deeply she had been wounded, but Mr. Alden's tray had begun to tilt. The crystal glasses trembled. One slid toward the edge. Evelyn crossed the floor before anyone else moved. She caught the glass in one hand and steadied the old man with the other. The room watched her touch a servant. Lady Drusilla's mouth hardened. "There, you see?" she said. "She knows where she belongs." The baronet laughed once more. Evelyn did not answer him. She did not answer Lady Drusilla. She looked only at Mr. Alden, whose breathing had grown shallow. "Are you unwell?" "A moment, miss." Only a moment. His knees weakened. Evelyn set the tray upon a marble table and took his arm around her shoulders. 2 footmen glanced toward Lady Drusilla for permission to help. None was given, so Evelyn bore the old butler's weight alone, while the guests stepped aside to protect their satin skirts. She led him through the same servants' door by which Lady Drusilla had ordered her to leave. No one in the ballroom knew that the old man she carried away possessed a truth capable of shaking Greyhaven to its foundations. Before we return to the beginning, tell us where you are listening from tonight. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next chapter. And if these stories bring you comfort, consider supporting the channel. Now let us go back to the winter when Evelyn first came to Greyhaven. 3 months earlier, rain had followed Evelyn's hired carriage from the railway station to the iron gates of the estate. Greyhaven stood upon a ridge above the village, its grey stone towers dark against the evening sky. Water ran down the carriage windows in narrow streams. Beyond them, bare trees bent beneath the wind. Evelyn had not seen the house in 8 years. She had been 19 when her father sent her away to care for an ailing aunt in Bath. She had returned at 27 with 1 trunk, £12, and a letter written in a hand that had become less steady with every line. The letter had come from her father. "Come home, Evelyn. There are matters I should have explained long ago. He had died before she arrived." By the time the carriage reached Greyhaven, the funeral had already taken place. That fact had not been written in any letter. Mr. Alden met her beneath the stone archway. His black coat was brushed clean, though its cuffs had been repaired so many times that the cloth showed different shades beneath the lantern light. He bowed. "Miss Evelyn." She stepped from the carriage into rain that soaked the hem of her dress within seconds. "Mr. Alden," she said. "Why was I not told?" The old butler looked toward the house. "Not here, miss." That was the first warning. The second waited inside. Lady Drusilla received Evelyn in the morning room beside a fire that seemed to warm every part of the chamber, except the chair offered to her guest. She wore mourning silk, though she had never been close to Evelyn's father. On the table beside her stood a silver chocolate pot, a porcelain cup, sliced seed cake, preserved cherries, and a dish of sugared almonds. Evelyn had eaten nothing since dawn. Lady Drusilla offered her nothing. "Your father's death was sudden," she said, "a seizure of the heart." Was he alone? Percival was with him. Evelyn turned toward the window. Lord Percival stood there with one shoulder against the frame, examining the rain as though the conversation bored him. He had changed since boyhood. His face had grown heavier. His hair was carefully arranged. A gold watch chain crossed his waistcoat, and a ring bearing the Grey family crest shone upon his right hand. He had always envied what Evelyn's father possessed. Now he looked like a man who believed he possessed it himself. "What did my father wish to tell me?" Evelyn asked. Lady Drusilla lifted her cup. "We cannot know. He sent for me. Grief often makes people sentimental. He wrote that there were matters to explain. Then perhaps he meant to apologize for leaving you with your aunt for so many years. The words were mild. Their intention was not." Evelyn folded her hands in her lap. "When may I see his papers?" Percival turned from the window. "His papers?" "His correspondence, his accounts. Anything concerning the estate or my mother's settlement." Lady Drusilla placed her cup upon its saucer. "There is nothing concerning you." The fire cracked behind the grate. For the first time in her life, Evelyn understood that fear could sharpen the mind rather than cloud it. She looked from Lady Drusilla to Percival. "My father left no will. He left instructions. May I read them?" "They were given to the family solicitor." "Then I shall call upon him." Percival smiled. "Mr. Bellamy has gone abroad." "In winter?" "For his health." Evelyn heard the answer and knew it was false. Not because she possessed proof, but because Percival spoke too quickly. Lady Drusilla rose. "You may remain at Greyhaven until the end of the month. After that, arrangements must be made." "What arrangements?" "Suitable employment, perhaps. You have experience nursing an invalid. That is not nothing." Evelyn looked at her aunt's empty cup. Not charity, she thought. Exile. Her father had owned land adjoining the Duke's estate and had managed several properties under Greyhaven's protection. He had not been rich by noble measure, but he had possessed a comfortable house, investments, and the income from 2 farms. Evelyn was his only child. Yet Lady Drusilla spoke as though she had inherited nothing but the right to leave quietly. The unfairness did not make Evelyn weep. Not then. It made her watch. She noticed Percival's ring. It had belonged to her father. She noticed that Lady Drusilla carried a key upon a black ribbon at her waist. She noticed that Mr. Alden did not meet her eyes while the key was visible. Greyhaven's west wing had once belonged to Evelyn's parents. Lady Drusilla gave her a small room beneath the roof instead. Its fireplace smoked. The rug was thin. Rain tapped through the night against the narrow window. Cold entered through the stone and remained. It crept into Evelyn's hands, into the blankets, into the water in the basin. The house had not merely placed her apart. It had made separation physical. She was not freezing because winter was severe. She was freezing because no one wished to spend coal upon her comfort. The next morning, she found Mr. Alden in the servants' hall, struggling to lift a basket of firewood. His left hand shook badly. Evelyn took the basket from him. "Miss, you must not be seen carrying that." "Why?" "Because Lady Drusilla will say you seek attention." "Then let her say it." He gave her a tired look. Greyhaven remembers every offence except its own. It was the nearest thing to humour she had heard since her return. Evelyn carried the wood to her room. Then she returned for another basket and found the old butler seated beside the kitchen stove, pressing a cloth to his wrist. The servants moved around him quickly. A cook stirred broth. A scullery maid scrubbed pans. 2 footmen whispered near the passage. Truth lived differently below stairs. Above, it appeared in sealed letters and guarded rooms. Below, it passed from hand to hand with bread, coal, keys, and dirty linen. Evelyn knelt beside Mr. Alden. "How long has your hand troubled you?" "Since autumn. Have you seen a physician?" "Lady Drusilla says physicians should not be summoned for stiffness. This is not stiffness." She examined his wrist. The joint was swollen, and the fingers curled inward when he tried to straighten them. The cook, Mrs. Finch, lowered her voice. He fell in the back passage last week." "I did not fall," Mr. Alden said. "You were found on the floor." The floor rose unexpectedly. Mrs. Finch gave Evelyn a look that said the old man's pride required gentleness. Evelyn asked for warm water, clean linen, and the small tin of salve she had brought from Bath. For 6 years, she had cared for her aunt through fever, pain, confusion, and the long indignities of illness. Nursing had not been considered respectable work among the people who visited her aunt's drawing room. Those same people had sent for Evelyn whenever one of them became ill. She wrapped Mr. Alden's wrist. For the first time in her life, she felt that the years others called wasted had given her something no inheritance could provide. "Useful hands." Mr. Alden watched her tie the bandage. "Your mother used to come below stairs when someone was hurt. Did she?" She remembered names. That is rarer than remembering faces. Evelyn tightened the knot. "What do you remember about my father's last days?" Mrs. Finch stopped stirring the broth. The footman went silent. Mr. Alden looked toward the half-open kitchen door. Then he said, "Not enough." It was not an answer. It was an invitation to wait. Over the following days, Evelyn learned the new shape of Greyhaven. Lady Drusilla occupied the east rooms. Percival used Evelyn's father's study. The door remained locked whenever he left. The servants had been ordered not to speak of the funeral. 2 maids had been dismissed the morning after Evelyn's father died. No reason was given. Evelyn also learned that the Duke of Ravenshade, who owned Greyhaven's surrounding lands and had long trusted her father's management, was expected to remain in London until spring. His absence mattered. With the Duke away, Lady Drusilla ruled the estate, as though no higher authority existed. Invitations went out in her name. Accounts passed through Percival's hands. Tenants seeking repairs were made to wait in the outer hall. Coal deliveries to the village cottages had been reduced, though the estate book still showed full payment. Evelyn discovered that last detail by chance, or so Percival believed. She had gone to the steward's office to request writing paper. The clerk left his ledger open when he stepped away. Evelyn saw 3 columns, then a figure repeated twice. Her aunt had taught her household accounts. Her father had once praised her ability with numbers before deciding it was unsuitable to encourage too much interest in business. The coal supplier had been paid £36. The village had received goods worth perhaps 20. Someone had kept the rest. Evelyn copied the figures upon the inside of an old envelope before the clerk returned. That evening, she showed nothing. She ate quietly at the far end of the dining table while Lady Drusilla discussed the coming winter ball. There would be velvet curtains brought from London, Paris silk for the ladies' withdrawing room, pearl decorations upon the supper tables, white gloves for the footmen, and new candles. For every chandelier, no coal for the cottages, Evelyn thought, but new candles for the ballroom. Percival noticed her silence. "You disapprove? Of candles? Of pleasure?" Evelyn folded her napkin. "I have never known pleasure to require so much accounting." Lady Drusilla's knife stopped against her plate. Percival smiled again, but this time the smile did not reach his eyes. "You spent too many years with an invalid, cousin. You have learned to mistake suspicion for intelligence." Evelyn met his gaze. "And you have spent too little time with honest men." The table went still. Mr. Alden stood behind Lady Drusilla's chair. He did not move, yet Evelyn saw the smallest change in his expression. Approval. Lady Drusilla dismissed the servants after supper. When the doors closed, she turned toward Evelyn. "You will attend the ball." Evelyn had expected another order. "Why? Because your absence would invite questions, and my presence will not? Your presence will demonstrate that this family has treated you generously." "Not truth, then. Appearance." Lady Drusilla leaned forward. "You will wear something modest. You will speak when spoken to. You will not discuss your father's affairs. And you will remember that your future depends entirely upon my goodwill." Evelyn heard the threat beneath each sentence. Not loud, not dramatic, not openly cruel. That was what made it dangerous. The following afternoon, she found a sealed card upon her tray. It was an invitation to the Greyhaven winter ball. Her name had been written in a clerk's hand. Beneath it, in smaller letters, someone had added, "Dependent relation of the household." The words were not necessary for admission. They were meant to define her before she entered the room. Evelyn held the card above the fire. For one moment, she considered burning it. Then she drew it back. Evidence did not always arrive in ledgers. Sometimes it came in insults foolish enough to be written down. That night, Mr. Alden came to her room carrying a coal scuttle. He placed it beside the grate, though Evelyn had not requested one. "Miss," he said, "there are things an old servant should not say." "Then do not say them. There are also things he should not keep silent." Evelyn waited. The wind pressed rain against the glass. Mr. Alden looked toward the corridor before drawing a small brass key from his pocket. "Your father gave me this 3 days before he died." "What does it open?" "A box inside the locked library cabinet." Evelyn's breath caught. "What is in the box?" "I do not know." His hands were shaking when he gave me the key. "He told me that if anything happened to him, I was to place it in yours." "Why did you wait?" "Because Lord Percival searched the servants' rooms after the funeral." Evelyn stared at him. "Searched them. He said a family paper was missing." The fire shifted low behind the grate. Mr. Alden closed Evelyn's fingers around the key. "I feared they would dismiss me before you came." "Then I feared they would dismiss you before I could speak. Fear makes cowards of old men." "No," Evelyn said. "Fear makes cowards of those who still have choices. You had none." He looked at her for a long moment. "There is more." Footsteps sounded in the corridor. Mr. Alden straightened at once. Evelyn slipped the key into her sleeve. The latch moved. Lady Drusilla stood in the doorway. Her eyes went first to Mr. Alden, then to the coal scuttle, then to Evelyn's hand. "Why are you here?" The butler bowed. Miss Evelyn's fire had gone out. Lady Drusilla looked at the flames. "It appears lively enough now." No one spoke. The silence deepened until even the rain seemed distant. Then Lady Drusilla smiled. "Alden, Lord Percival requires you in the study." "At this hour?" "At once." Mr. Alden bowed again and left. Lady Drusilla remained. "You are kind to servants, Evelyn. I try to be kind to anyone who has earned it. How exhausting." She stepped into the room and closed the door behind her. "Tomorrow night, you will attend the ball. Afterward, we shall discuss a position found for you in London." "What position?" "Companion to an elderly widow." Evelyn thought of Bath, of medicine spoons, cold corridors, and years spent beside another woman's bed. "And if I refuse?" Lady Drusilla's expression did not alter. "Then you will leave Greyhaven without a reference, without an allowance, and without the protection of this family's name." It was not a proposal. It was removal made respectable. Evelyn touched the hidden key inside her sleeve. For the first time in her life, she did not feel small before someone who held power over her. She felt alert. After Lady Drusilla left, Evelyn waited until the corridor fell quiet. Then she crossed to the door and opened it a fraction. Voices came from below. Percival's voice, and Mr. Alden's. Evelyn could not hear every word. Only fragments rose through the stairwell. "The cabinet. Before the ball. The old man knows." Then Percival spoke more clearly. "If he becomes confused in front of guests, no one will question his retirement." A door closed. Evelyn stood in the darkness, with the brass key pressed into her palm. Mr. Alden had trusted her with the one thing Percival feared, and by morning they meant to silence him. Evelyn did not sleep. She sat beside the fire until the last coal collapsed into a red glow, listening to Greyhaven settle around her. Wind moved through the chimneys. Pipes groaned behind the walls. Somewhere below, a door opened and closed with deliberate care. The brass key lay in her palm. It was small enough to be overlooked and heavy enough to alter a life. Before dawn, Evelyn wrapped it in linen and stitched it inside the hem of her petticoat. People searched drawers before clothing, and clothing before dignity. She had learned that much during the years when her aunt's visitors treated her as part nurse, part servant, and never quite family. At breakfast, Mr. Alden's place beside the sideboard stood empty. Lady Drusilla poured tea as though nothing had changed. Percival read a letter near the window, one hand resting over the gold chain of his watch. Evelyn buttered a piece of bread. "Where is Mr. Alden?" Percival did not look up. "Resting. He was well enough to serve yesterday. He is no longer young." Lady Drusilla raised her cup. Old servants often fail to recognize when usefulness has left them. Evelyn looked at the empty place again. Has he been dismissed? Retired, Percival said. Without notice? With generosity? Not generosity, Evelyn thought. Disposal. She laid down her knife. I should like to see him. That will not be possible, Lady Drusilla replied. He has gone to his sister in York. Evelyn knew Mr. Alden had no sister. He had once told her that Greyhaven was the only family he had left. Percival watched her above the edge of his letter. You seem troubled. I dislike sudden departures. Then you must learn to expect them. The room fell silent. For the first time in her life, Evelyn understood that an obvious lie could be useful. It revealed not only what someone wished to hide, but how little resistance they expected. Percival believed she could do nothing. She lowered her eyes. Perhaps you are right. His shoulders loosened. That was her first small victory. After breakfast, Evelyn changed into her plainest dress, added a dark shawl, and left by the rear passage. Mrs. Finch intercepted her beside the kitchen door. You are going out? To the village. Lady Drusilla has ordered that no carriage be given to you. I did not ask for one. The cook glanced toward the servants' hall. Take the path behind the dairy. The front drive can be seen from the study. Evelyn tightened her shawl. Do you know where Mr. Alden is? Mrs. Finch's expression hardened. They took him before sunrise. Who? Lord Percival and Mr. Crane. The estate steward? She nodded. Mr. Alden was wrapped in his coat, but he had no hat. An old man does not leave for York without a hat. Where did they go? Toward the lower road. The village, then, or the railway station? Mrs. Finch caught Evelyn's sleeve. Be careful, miss. Mr. Crane came below stairs last night, asking who had spoken to you. He says the old master's papers belong to Lord Percival now. They do not, no. But a man with keys may act like an owner until the true owner returns. Evelyn thought of the Duke of Ravenshade in London. When will his grace return? No one knows. Letters come from his secretary, but Lord Percival opens the estate post before it reaches the household. Another fact to remember. Evelyn crossed the frost-hardened fields on foot. The village lay 2 miles below Greyhaven, gathered around a stone church and a narrow market square. Smoke rose from chimneys. Cartwheels broke the ice along the road. Women carrying baskets stepped around deep brown puddles. The cold pressed through her boots. Each step reminded her that she had no carriage, no servant, no acknowledged place within the house behind her. Yet the cold did something else. It made her angry enough to continue. She entered the first inn near the lower road, then the second. No one had seen Mr. Alden. At the third, a narrow house called the Crown and Thistle, the innkeeper's wife recognized his description. An elderly gentleman, a servant. The woman looked toward 2 farmers seated beside the hearth. He came before sunrise. Not willingly, I think. Evelyn gripped the edge of the counter. Where is he? Upstairs. May I see him? The woman hesitated. The estate steward paid for the room, said the old man was confused and must not be disturbed. Evelyn removed 1 glove and placed 2 shillings on the counter. I cared for an invalid for 6 years. If he is ill, I may help him. If he is not, someone should know. The woman covered the coins with her hand. Top floor, last door. The staircase smelled of damp wool, smoke, and beer. Evelyn climbed quickly. The last door was locked. She knocked. Mr. Alden? No answer came. She knocked again. A faint voice moved behind the wood. Miss Evelyn. Relief passed through her so sharply that she closed her eyes. Are you hurt? Only my pride. The attempt at humor was weak. Evelyn tried the latch. Stand away from the door. She seized the iron poker beside the corridor stove and forced its end near the lock. The wood splintered, but the bolt held. The innkeeper's wife appeared behind her, carrying a ring of keys. My husband will be furious. Tell him I did it. Oh, I shall. The third key opened the door. Mr. Alden sat on the edge of a narrow bed. His coat was buttoned incorrectly. One side of his face was bruised. A strip of cloth had been tied around his trembling hand. Evelyn crossed the room. Who struck you? No one. That answer is unworthy of your profession. His mouth shifted into the faintest smile. Mr. Crane objected when I refused to surrender my keys. Did he take them? The household keys, yes. And the brass key? Mr. Alden looked at her. I gave him an old key from the wine cellar. For one moment, Evelyn nearly laughed. Why did they bring you here? To keep me from speaking before the ball. Tomorrow they mean to send me to a charitable home near Leeds. Without your consent? Consent is a luxury in old age, miss, particularly when one has no family and no property. Evelyn sat beside him. You have both now. The old butler lowered his gaze. Lady Drusilla will cast you out for this. She intends to cast me out regardless. Not if you leave quietly. Then I would know I abandoned the only person who tried to help me. Mr. Alden's eyes filled, though no tears fell. Evelyn examined his bruise and his breathing. He was shaken, cold, and exhausted, but not gravely injured. What did you hear before my father died? Mr. Alden looked toward the window. 3 nights before his death, your father quarrelled with Lord Percival in the study. The door was partly open. About what? Money taken from the estate accounts. Lord Percival said the funds would be replaced after the Duke approved a new lease. Your father said His Grace had approved no such thing. The missing coal payments. And more, Mr. Alden said. Much more. How much? I heard £4,000. Evelyn drew a slow breath. £4,000 could purchase a fine house in London. It could support several families for years. It could not vanish through carelessness. What did my father intend to do? Send the accounts to the Duke? Did he? I carried a sealed packet to the post tray that evening. By morning it was gone. Posted? Burned, I fear. By whom? Miss Clara saw Lord Percival near the servants' hall after midnight. Clara? A kitchen maid. 16 years old. Dismissed after the funeral. Where is she now? With an aunt above the cobbler's shop, unless they have frightened her away. Mr. Alden reached inside his coat and produced a folded page. I kept this. Evelyn opened it. Dates and sums had been written in her father's hand. Beside several entries stood the initials PG. At the bottom, one sentence had been underlined twice. Original trust deed retained in locked cabinet. Copy sent to Bellamy. Evelyn read it again. Mr. Bellamy, the solicitor who had supposedly gone abroad, if he retained a copy, Lord Percival would need him silent. Do you believe he is in danger? I believe your cousin finds absence useful. Footsteps sounded on the stairs. Mr. Alden stiffened. Evelyn folded the paper and slipped it into her sleeve. The innkeeper's wife entered. A gentleman is asking for you downstairs. Who? Mr. Crane. Evelyn rose. Do not let him enter this room. He says he has authority from Greyhaven. This is not Greyhaven. The woman's expression changed. No, miss, it is not. Below, Mr. Crane stood near the hearth, removing his gloves finger by finger. He was narrow, pale-eyed, and dressed with the severe neatness of a man who mistook order for virtue. Miss Marlowe, Mr. Crane, Lady Drusilla is concerned. How touching. You left without permission. I am 27 years old. You reside under her roof. Temporarily. His gaze moved toward the stairs. Mr. Alden is unwell. Your presence may excite him. He is bruised and imprisoned. The inn became quiet. One farmer lowered his mug. Mr. Crane smiled without warmth. You misunderstand the care taken for him. Then unlock his door and allow him to leave. He is incapable of deciding what is best. Who declared him incapable? A physician will examine him tomorrow. Which physician? That is not your concern. Evelyn stepped closer. It became my concern when you struck him. The innkeeper's wife stopped wiping the counter. Mr. Crane's eyes sharpened. You should consider your position before making accusations. I have considered it. That is why I make them before witnesses. The fire cracked. No one spoke. Mr. Crane replaced his gloves. Lady Drusilla expects you at Greyhaven. I shall return when Mr. Alden is safely placed. You have no right to interfere. Neither have you. He lowered his voice. Many influential guests will attend the ball tonight. It would be unfortunate if your behavior gave them reason to doubt your character. There it was. Reputation. The weapon reserved for women who had little property and no powerful husband. Evelyn met his gaze. Then perhaps you should be cautious. A woman with no character left to lose may speak very freely. For the first time, Mr. Crane seemed uncertain. He left without another word. By noon, Mr. Alden had been moved to a cottage behind the church. It belonged to Mrs. Finch's widowed sister, Mrs. Wren, who took in sewing and rented her upper room to railway labourers. The room was poor but warm. Evelyn purchased broth, bread, and coal from the market. The few coins reduced her £12, yet spending them by choice did not frighten her as much as having comfort withheld by others. Mrs. Wren agreed to shelter Mr. Alden for 2 nights. No longer, she warned. Mr. Crane collects half the rents in this row. If he learns I helped you, he may raise mine. Then I shall pay the increase. With what? The question remained between them. Evelyn had no answer. That afternoon, she found Clara above the cobbler's shop. The girl opened the door, only a hand's width. I cannot speak to you. You are Clara Hayes. The door began to close. Evelyn placed the invitation card into the gap. Clara read the words dependent relation of the household. They are trying to discredit me, Evelyn said. They dismissed you because you saw something. The girl's face went pale. I saw nothing. Then tell me what you did not see. A sound escaped Clara, half laugh and half sob. At last, she opened the door. Children whispered near a stove behind her. The room smelled of leather and cabbage soup. Clara spoke quickly. I went back for my shawl. Lord Percival was in the servants' hall. He had a letter in his hand. He threw it into the fire. Did you see the address? His Grace, the Duke of Ravenshade. Are you certain? I can read, miss. What happened next? Mr. Crane came in. Lord Percival said the old master would ruin them if the Duke saw the accounts. Mr. Crane said the old master would sign nothing after another dose. Evelyn felt the room grow cold. Another dose of what? I do not know. They heard me. Mr. Crane said I had stolen sugar. I was dismissed before breakfast. Did you tell anyone? My aunt said, no magistrate would believe a kitchen maid against a gentleman. She was probably right. Clara flinched. Evelyn softened her voice. Probably right then. Not necessarily now. The girl looked toward the children. I cannot lose this room. I will not ask you to speak publicly yet. Yet? One day, someone may need to tell the truth where everyone can hear it. Clara shook her head. I am not brave. Neither am I. You stood against Mr. Crane at the inn. Because there were witnesses. Clara considered that. Evelyn showed her the page of dates. Does any entry mean something to you? Clara pointed to the last. That was the night Lord Percival burned the letter. The same night Evelyn's father had written that the trust deed remained in the locked cabinet. When Evelyn left, evening bells sounded over the market. Vendors packed away apples, ribbons, candles, jars of preserves, and small loaves darkened by the oven. She watched them work. At Greyhaven, survival depended upon permission. Here, it depended upon labor. For the first time in her life, Evelyn asked herself not what she had inherited, but what she could earn. She knew accounts. She knew nursing. She could write letters for those who could not. She could keep records for shopkeepers who lost money through poor figures. These were not accomplishments Lady Drusilla admired. That did not make them worthless. When Evelyn returned to Greyhaven, lamps burned in every lower window. Carriages crowded the drive. Footmen hurried through the rain. Music reached the courtyard in bright fragments. The winter ball had begun. Mrs. Finch met her at the servants' entrance. You should not have returned. I need access to the library. Tonight? Especially tonight. Mr. Crane has Mr. Alden's keys. Then I need Mr. Crane. He is in the ballroom. Good. Evelyn changed into her mother's pale blue gown and pinned her hair without assistance. The brass key remained sewn into her hem. Her father's page rested beneath the lining of her bodice. She entered the ballroom through the main doors. Conversation shifted around her. Lady Drusilla stood beneath the portraits near the Duke's empty chair. Percival spoke to a countess in silver-grey silk. Mr. Crane waited near the supper room with the estate keys hanging at his waist. Evelyn moved slowly among the guests. She accepted no wine. She answered no insult. She allowed herself to appear chastened. Percival approached during the second dance. You returned. As you commanded. His smile warmed. Reason suits you. Does it? You may still leave Greyhaven with dignity. Evelyn glanced toward Mr. Crane. And Mr. Alden, he will be cared for. In a locked room. Percival's expression remained pleasant for the watching guests. Do not ruin yourself for a servant. Evelyn looked directly at him. A servant preserved my father's final trust. What have you preserved? Fear entered his face, only for an instant. Then it vanished. The musicians finished. Applause moved through the room. Percival bowed. You are tired, cousin. Not yet. Evelyn crossed toward Mr. Crane. A tray of wine passed between them. She stepped aside as a young gentleman turned too quickly and struck the footman's arm. Crystal glasses fell. Red wine spilled over Mr. Crane's waistcoat. The room gasped. Evelyn caught his sleeve as though to steady him. Your keys. Mr. Crane looked down. The ring was gone. He pushed past her, searching among broken glass and dark stains. Evelyn continued walking. Mrs. Finch had caught the keys beneath her apron. Minutes later, Evelyn entered the locked library, while the cook stood guard beside the half-open door. Be quick. The estate keys opened the cabinet. The small brass key opened the box inside. Evelyn lifted the lid. There was no trust deed, no sealed will, no packet for the Duke, only grey ash and a blackened ribbon. They had found it first. Mrs. Finch whispered from the doorway. Someone is coming. Evelyn searched the box. Her fingers touched a raised edge beneath the velvet lining. She pulled it free. A narrow compartment opened. Inside lay a single folded page, not the deed. A receipt bearing Mr. Bellamy's name and a London address. Beneath it, in her father's hand, were 6 words. Second copy placed with the Duke. Footsteps stopped outside. Mrs. Finch drew a sharp breath. The door opened. Lady Drusilla stood on the threshold. Behind her waited Percival, Mr. Crane, and 3 guests from the ballroom. Lady Drusilla looked at the open cabinet, the torn lining, and the paper in Evelyn's hand. Then she smiled. You see, she told the guests, exactly as I warned you. Grief has made the poor girl unstable. Percival stepped forward. Give me the paper, Evelyn. She folded it into her palm. No. His voice hardened. There is nothing in this room that belongs to you. Then why are you afraid of one page? The corridor became still. Music continued beyond it, bright and careless. Lady Drusilla turned to the guests. My niece has been searching locked rooms, accusing servants, and inventing conspiracies. For her own protection, she must be removed from Greyhaven tonight. Mr. Crane reached for Evelyn's arm. She stepped backward toward the fire. Percival saw her intention. Do not. For the first time in her life, Evelyn saw him lose control before witnesses. She held the receipt above the flames. Let me leave freely, and it remains whole. Lady Drusilla's face changed. Not anger, but calculation. You have nowhere to go. Evelyn thought of the warm room behind the church, of Mr. Alden's injured hand, of Clara above the cobbler's shop, of accounts she could keep, patients she could tend, and money she might earn. I have somewhere honest. No one spoke. Mr. Crane lowered his hand. Lady Drusilla glanced at the watching guests. She could not seize Evelyn without revealing how much the page mattered. Very well, she said. You will depart through the servants' door. That was how Evelyn came to stand beneath the ballroom chandelier before the crowd, carrying Mr. Alden, when weakness overtook him. Yet the humiliation Lady Drusilla arranged did not end as she expected. After Evelyn led the old butler into the passage, a footman brought her cloak. Mrs. Finch placed a small bundle into her hands. Clara waited in the courtyard beside a hired cart, pale but determined. The cart rolled away from Greyhaven beneath cold rain. Mr. Alden opened his eyes. Miss Evelyn, he whispered, the receipt is not the only thing your father hid. She leaned closer. What else? The old butler looked back at the illuminated house. A name, he said. The name of the man who prepared the false accounts. Evelyn waited. His voice weakened to a breath. The Duke's own secretary. The cart reached the village shortly before midnight. Rain shone upon the road in the light of Clara's lantern. Mr. Alden lay beneath 2 blankets, pale whenever the wheels struck a rut. Evelyn sat beside him with one hand around the folded receipt, hidden inside her sleeve. Mrs. Wren opened her cottage door before they knocked. You have brought trouble with you, she said. Only the manageable kind, Mr. Alden murmured. Mrs. Wren stared at him, then stepped aside. That was the first laugh of the night. Inside, the fire had been banked with coal. Clara closed the shutters, while Evelyn settled Mr. Alden upon the bed. When his breathing steadied, she drew out the receipt. "What name did my father hide?" Mr. Alden looked toward Clara. "The girl can be trusted," Evelyn said. Clara raised her chin. "I lost my place because I told the truth." The old butler considered her. "Then you have paid dearly enough to hear it." He turned to Evelyn. "The Duke's secretary is Mr. Horace Vane." Evelyn knew the name. Letters bearing his signature arrived at Greyhaven several times each month. Percival often opened them at breakfast and burned the envelopes afterward. "What did my father discover?" Mr. Vane approved false leases in the Duke's name. Lord Percival borrowed against land he did not control. Mr. Crane altered the estate books so rents appeared lower and expenses higher. The missing money was divided among them. "And my mother's trust?" Mr. Alden's expression changed. "Your mother's settlement was placed under your father's care until you reached 25. By then you were still in Bath. I am 27. Yes, then the money should have been transferred to me. It should. How much?" "Nearly £6,000, with the income added." Clara drew in a breath. Mrs. Wren stopped pouring water. Evelyn felt no joy. The sum did not feel like wealth. It felt like an explanation. Lady Drusilla had not wanted her poor by accident. Percival had not tried to send her away merely because she was inconvenient. They needed her isolated, dependent, and uncertain of her rights. "Why did my father never tell me?" "Shame," Mr. Alden said. The word hurt more than she expected. "He sent you away after your mother died because Lady Drusilla persuaded him that property disputes were unfit for a young woman. Later, when he discovered what had happened to the trust, he delayed. Each year made confession harder, not cruelty, cowardice." Evelyn turned toward the fire. Her father had loved her. She still believed that. Yet love had not made him brave when bravery was required. For the first time in her life, she allowed both truths to stand together. "Did he sign anything before he died?" Mr. Alden nodded. "He feared Percival and Mr. Vane meant to place a transfer before him while he was weak." Clara stepped forward. "Mr. Crane said the old master would sign nothing after another dose." Evelyn looked at her. "What was he given?" "Tea was taken to the study each evening," Mr. Alden said. "Lady Drusilla prepared it herself." The cottage fell silent. "Do you believe they poisoned him?" "I believe they gave him something intended to weaken his judgment. Whether it caused his death, I cannot say. That distinction mattered." Evelyn would not make an accusation she could not prove. Percival had already begun to present her as unstable. A reckless claim would serve him better than silence. "We need documents," she said. "Something that can be copied and placed before someone they cannot dismiss." Mr. Alden pointed toward the receipt. "Mr. Bellamy may still have them. If he is alive, then London must tell us." By morning, Evelyn had decided. She would find Mr. Bellamy and learn whether the Duke held a second copy of the trust deed. But travel required money. Her remaining £12 had already diminished. Mr. Alden was too weak to accompany her. Clara could not abandon her aunt's household without wages. Mrs. Wren could not shelter them indefinitely. Evelyn spent the day walking through the village with a notebook beneath her arm. The apothecary needed someone to record debts. The baker's widow had not balanced her flour accounts since her husband's death. A draper had delayed 3 letters because his handwriting embarrassed him. Evelyn offered her services. Some looked doubtful when she named a price. A gentleman's daughter keeping shop accounts was unusual. A gentleman's daughter admitting she needed payment was worse. She did not lower her eyes. By evening, she had earned 7 shillings. It was not enough. It was hers. During the next 6 days, she copied invoices, arranged household books, wrote letters, and sat through one night beside a feverish child while the village physician attended another patient. For the first time in her life, exhaustion did not feel like captivity. It felt like construction. She was not merely escaping Greyhaven. She was building the means to oppose it. Mr. Alden recovered slowly. Clara carried messages. Mrs. Finch sent bread and news from the house. Lady Drusilla had told the servants that Evelyn stole papers and fled after a fit of grief. Percival had sent inquiries to the railway station. Mr. Crane had visited Clara's aunt twice. The third message from Mrs. Finch contained a strip of paper sewn inside the wrapping. The West Library has been emptied. Ledgers removed to London. His Grace expected at Greyhaven for Lord Percival's engagement dinner. Evelyn read the words twice. Clara leaned over her shoulder. "Lady Honoria Vale," she said. "Her father has money and wants influence with the Duke. An engagement dinner would bring the same people who had watched Evelyn's humiliation. More importantly, it would bring the Duke." Mr. Alden sat beside the fire. "If Percival announces the match before His Grace, he will present himself as secure and respectable. Then the truth must be revealed there," Evelyn said. "Not privately. Not where Lady Drusilla could deny what had been said. Before witnesses. First, Evelyn needed proof. 2 mornings later, she took the train to London alone. She wore a brown travelling dress, borrowed from Mrs. Wren, and carried one small bag. Clara accompanied her to the platform. "What shall I do while you are gone?" "Stay near Mr. Alden. Do not speak to Mr. Crane alone. Will you return for the engagement dinner? If I find what I need. And if you do not." Evelyn looked along the railway line. "Then I shall return knowing where the proof is not." London received her beneath a grey sky. The streets beyond the station roared with wheels, hooves, bells and voices. Omnibuses forced their way through crowded crossings. Porters hauled trunks. Seamstresses bent near upper windows. Women sold flowers beside gentlemen who never looked down. Here, rank still opened doors. But labour opened some as well. Evelyn found modest lodging near Bloomsbury and went at once to the address on Mr. Bellamy's receipt. The brass plate had been removed. A stationer occupied the ground floor. Mr. Bellamy closed his office in autumn. The proprietor said, "Where did he go?" "No one knows." "Was he ill?" "Frightened, I should say." He glanced toward the street. 2 gentlemen came often. One wore an estate steward's coat. The other had the manner of a government clerk, though he was no government man. Horace Vane. Evelyn did not speak the name. "Did Mr. Bellamy have a clerk?" "Thomas Reed. He works for a shipping house near the river." She found Thomas Reed the next morning. He was thin, red-haired, and wary. He denied knowing anything until Evelyn showed him the receipt. "Where did you obtain that?" "My father wrote upon it. Your father was Mr. Marlowe of Greyhaven." "Yes." Mr. Reed closed the records room door. "You should not have come openly. Neither should Mr. Bellamy have disappeared. He is not dead." Relief passed through Evelyn. "Where is he?" "I cannot tell you until I know whom you serve." "I serve no one." "Everyone serves someone." Evelyn placed the ball invitation upon the desk. The words, "dependent relation of the household," remained written beneath her name. "This is whom I served." It did not protect me. Then she showed him her father's list and the hidden receipt. Mr. Reed's resistance weakened. Mr. Bellamy left after Mr. Vane demanded the trust records. He feared they would accuse him of fraud if he refused. "Where is he?" "With his brother near Richmond." "Can you give me the address? If Mr. Vane learns I helped you, I may lose my position." Evelyn understood his fear. It was the same fear that had kept Clara silent, Mr. Alden obedient, and her father ashamed. She did not despise it, but she could not surrender to it. How many people must be ruined before caution becomes cooperation? His face reddened. Courage does not feed a family. "No," she said. "I speak as someone who has begun to feed herself." The room went still. At last, he wrote the address. "Burn it after reading." Mr. Bellamy's brother lived in a narrow brick house beside a winter garden stripped of leaves. A maid told Evelyn the solicitor was too unwell for visitors. Evelyn gave her name. Minutes later, she was shown into a study. Mr. Bellamy sat near the fire with a blanket over his knees. His eyes moved too quickly toward every sound from the street. "You should not be here, Miss Marlowe. So I have been told in several places. Your father should never have involved you. His failure was that he involved me too late." Mr. Bellamy looked down. "That is fair. Do you have a copy of my mother's trust deed?" "No." Evelyn remained standing. "I crossed the county, found an imprisoned servant, and followed a receipt hidden beneath the lining of a burned box. Do not offer me a lie because it is shorter than the truth." He stared at her. Then he crossed to a bookcase, removed a volume of sermons, and took out a folded document. "A certified copy," he said. "And the original?" "Sent to the Duke 8 months ago." "Did His Grace receive it?" His secretary acknowledged receipt. "Mr. Vane?" "Yes." "Then the Duke may never have seen it." "That is what your father believed." Mr. Bellamy placed the document on the desk. "The trust grants you the principal sum, accumulated income, and control of 2 farms after your 25th birthday. Lord Percival had no right to borrow against them." "How much did he take?" "From your trust, more than £2,000. From the Duke's estates, perhaps 5,000. Will you testify?" Mr. Bellamy moved away. "No. You know the accounts were altered. I know Mr. Vane threatened to accuse me of negligence. You also know my father was weakened before his death." The solicitor's face changed. "What have you heard?" "That he was given repeated doses of something." Mr. Bellamy sat slowly. "Your father signed a transfer 2 days before he died." Evelyn's breath stopped. "You said Percival had no right to the farms." "The transfer would be invalid if your father lacked clear judgment. I refused to witness it." His speech was confused. His hand would not obey him. "Who witnessed it?" "Mr. Crane and Dr. Silas Crowther. A physician, one heavily indebted to Lord Percival." Mr. Bellamy opened a drawer and removed a paper. "This is my written objection. I kept it when Mr. Vane ordered the file destroyed." Evelyn read it. Her father had been unable to state the date. He had repeatedly asked why Evelyn had not answered his letters she had never received. Lady Drusilla had not merely kept them apart. She had allowed him to believe his daughter had abandoned him. Pain rose so quickly that the words blurred. Not now. Grief could come later. Did he sign after drinking tea? Mr. Bellamy nodded. A cup stood beside him. There was dark sediment at the bottom. Dr. Crowther called it a harmless sleeping draught. Do you believe that? No. Will you say so before the Duke? Mr. Bellamy turned toward the fire. If I appear at Greyhaven, Mr. Vane will destroy me. He has already driven you from your office. I still have my freedom. For the first time in her life, Evelyn saw how respectable men gave fear gentler names. May I take these documents? The deed, yes. The objection is my only protection. Then copy it. He looked at her. Now. Mr. Bellamy copied the objection, sealed it, and signed both pages. Evelyn placed the copies inside her dress. Where are the altered ledgers? Mr. Vane keeps a private office near Westminster, but if the Duke is expected at Greyhaven, the ledgers will return with him. Along with the man who prepared them, Evelyn left Richmond after dark. Instead of returning to the village, she went to Westminster. Mr. Vane's office stood above a bookseller in a street crowded with solicitors and clerks. The outer door was locked. Evelyn waited beneath an awning across the road. An hour later, Horace Vane emerged. He was broad-shouldered, clean-shaven, and dressed in a black coat of excellent cut. A leather case hung from his hand. Mr. Crane followed him. They spoke beside a waiting cab. The wind carried fragments. Greyhaven. Engagement. The Duke must sign before questions begin. Then Mr. Crane spoke clearly. The girl has gone to London. Vane's face hardened. Find her. And if she has Bellamy's copy, then she must appear unreliable before His Grace arrives. The cab pulled away. They knew she was searching. There was no longer time for caution. Evelyn returned to her lodging and worked through the night. She copied her father's list, the trust deed, and Mr. Bellamy's objection. One packet she kept, one she addressed to a magistrate near Greyhaven. The third she sealed for the Duke. At dawn, she carried the Duke's packet to a private courier. Delivery to Greyhaven, the clerk asked. To His Grace personally. That costs more. Evelyn placed nearly half her remaining money upon the counter. Then it must cost more. She returned to the village the following evening. Mr. Alden was strong enough to sit beside the fire. Clara had begun copying the baker's accounts under Evelyn's instructions. Mrs. Wren had cleared a corner of the room for a desk. 3 worn ledgers waited upon it. A beginning had formed, not through inheritance. Through usefulness, the engagement dinner was set for 2 nights later. Mrs. Finch's final message arrived that morning. His Grace reached Greyhaven at noon. Mr. Vane with him. Lord Percival will announce his engagement after supper. Library guarded. Dr. Crowther invited. Every person tied to the fraud would be beneath one roof. They will not admit you, Mr. Alden said. I do not need an invitation. Lady Drusilla ordered the servants to refuse you entry. Then I shall use the door she chose for me. The servants' door. Mrs. Finch would let them into the lower corridor. Clara would remain near the kitchen. Mr. Alden would carry the household register containing the dates of Evelyn's father's illness and the dismissed servants. But the false transfer was still missing. Without it, Percival could claim the fraud had never been completed. The library is guarded, Mr. Alden said. Then something worth guarding is inside. Evelyn prepared a simple plan. During dinner, Clara would report smoke in the west corridor. In the confusion, Evelyn and Mr. Alden would enter through the old wine passage and search the cabinet. That is not a plan, Mr. Alden said. It is an invitation to arrest. Only if we fail before the Duke sees the papers, and if the cabinet is empty, then Percival will have the documents upon him, or Mr. Vane will have them in his case. Clara twisted her apron. How will we make them reveal that? Evelyn touched the copied packet inside her cloak, by allowing them to believe they have destroyed the only proof. The night of the engagement dinner came bitter and clear. Snow lay thinly over the road, reflecting the lamps of carriages climbing toward Greyhaven. Evelyn wore a dark wool dress and her mother's pearl brooch. Mr. Alden stood beside her in his old butler's coat, one hand still trembling. "You need not come," she said. "Yes, miss, I do." They walked the final distance from the village. Inside Greyhaven, guests dined beneath candlelight. Silver trays carried roast pheasant, warm rolls, glazed vegetables, preserved plums, and iced cakes. Wine came from the Duke's oldest cellar. Outside, the cold entered Evelyn's gloves and gathered around her wrists. The contrast no longer humbled her. It accused them. Mrs. Finch opened the servants' door. She looked at Mr. Alden. "You look dreadful. I hoped for distinguished." "You have never achieved it." The old man smiled. That was the second and final laugh of the evening. Clara entered behind them. The kitchen fell silent. One maid covered her mouth. A footman lowered his tray. Truth had returned below stairs before it reached the drawing room. Mrs. Finch led Evelyn into the passage. "His Grace is already displeased. The new tenant agreements were placed before him this afternoon. He asked why the rents had changed. What did Percival say? That your father approved them. Did the Duke believe him? Enough to continue dinner, not enough to stop asking questions." A bell rang above. Mrs. Finch looked at Clara. "Now." Clara ran toward the kitchen stairs and called that smoke had been seen near the west corridor. Servants moved at once. Doors opened. Footmen hurried past with water. Guests began leaving the dining room in alarm. Evelyn and Mr. Alden entered the old wine passage. At its end stood a narrow door hidden behind the library shelves. Mr. Alden pressed the latch. The library was empty. Evelyn crossed to the cabinet. The estate key Mrs. Finch had copied opened the first lock. The brass key opened the inner box. Nothing. Mr. Alden searched the desk. Mrs. Finch touched the ash in the fireplace. Still warm. They were too late. Footsteps sounded beyond the door. Percival entered with Horace Vane. Mr. Crane followed and locked the door behind them. For one moment, no one moved. Then Percival smiled. "I knew you would return for an empty box." Evelyn kept her face still. Mr. Vane placed his leather case upon the desk. "You have caused considerable inconvenience, Miss Marlowe, and you have stolen considerably more." Mr. Crane stepped toward Mr. Alden. "The old man should have remained in Leeds." Mr. Alden straightened. "And you should have learned that servants hear what gentlemen say when they mistake silence for stupidity." Percival's smile disappeared. "Search her." Mr. Crane seized Evelyn's arm. Mr. Vane raised one hand. "There is no need for disorder. Miss Marlowe came carrying stolen papers. Once they are recovered, His Grace will be informed that grief drove her to trespass and blackmail." Evelyn looked at the leather case. The false transfer was inside. So were the altered ledgers. Mr. Crane found the packet beneath her cloak and handed it to Vane. He opened it. Mr. Bellamy's objection. The trust deed, her father's list, all the proof she had gathered. Percival took the papers and held them over the fire. "You should have remained in Bath." Evelyn watched the edges catch. Flame crossed her father's handwriting. The seal blackened. The trust deed curled inward. Mr. Alden made a sound of despair. Evelyn did not move. Not defeat. Performance. Percival dropped the burning pages into the grate. For the first time that evening, he relaxed. Vane closed his case. "Now," he said, "we may return to the engagement." A knock sounded at the library door. Mr. Crane turned. "Who is there?" A man answered from the corridor. "The Duke of Ravenshade." No one breathed. Percival looked at the ashes, then at Vane's leather case. The handle turned. The Duke entered with Evelyn's sealed courier packet in his hand. The Duke of Ravenshade entered without haste. He was a tall man in his late 50s, broad through the shoulders, his dark evening coat marked by melting snow. Grey touched his hair at the temples. His face held the controlled weariness of someone accustomed to being obeyed, and therefore rarely required to raise his voice. The sealed courier packet rested in his left hand. Behind him stood Lady Honoria Vale, her father, and several guests drawn from the dining room by the report of smoke. More faces gathered in the corridor. Fans opened. Whispers moved from one person to another. It was almost the same crowd that had watched Evelyn leave through the servants' door. Almost. This time no one laughed. The Duke looked first at Percival, then at the ashes in the fireplace. "I asked who had entered my library," he said. Percival recovered quickly. "Uncle," Evelyn forced her way into the house. "We found her attempting to steal family papers." The Duke turned toward Evelyn. "Did you?" "I entered to recover documents concerning my mother's trust and the Greyhaven accounts." "Documents which do not belong to her," Lady Drusilla said from the doorway. She had arrived behind the guests, dressed in dark green velvet with emeralds at her throat. Her expression remained calm, but one hand closed tightly around her fan. The Duke lifted the courier packet. "Then why did copies of those documents arrive for me this afternoon?" Percival's face changed, only slightly. But Evelyn saw it. Horace Vane stepped forward. "Your Grace, whatever was delivered must be examined carefully. Miss Marlowe has been distressed since her father's death. She has already made accusations against servants, family members, and respected professional men." The Duke looked at him. "You are correct, Vane. The papers must be examined carefully." Relief touched the secretary's face. Then the Duke continued, "Which is why I sent for the magistrate." No one spoke. Music had stopped in the ballroom. Even the servants gathered beyond the corridor had fallen silent. Lady Drusilla lowered her fan. "Surely that is unnecessary. £7,000 may seem unnecessary to some families," the Duke said. "It does not seem so to mine." Percival's voice tightened. "What has Evelyn told you?" "Nothing." The Duke looked at her. "I have not yet spoken with Miss Marlowe." He raised the courier packet. "But I have read a copy of her mother's trust deed, a written objection by Mr. Bellamy, and a list of unexplained transfers prepared by her father." Mr. Vane's composure slipped. "Bellamy is a frightened and negligent man. That may be true. It does not make his dates false." The Duke moved into the library. The guests followed until the room and corridor were crowded. Lady Honoria remained near the door, her pale gown almost colorless beneath the candles. Her father stood beside her, his mouth set in a hard line. The Duke placed the packet upon the desk. "Where is your leather case, Vane?" Mr. Vane rested one hand upon it. "It contains private correspondence." "Then you will not object to keeping it closed while the magistrate arrives. This is an insult." "No," the Duke said. "An insult is delivered for pleasure. This is caution." A murmur passed through the guests. Percival stepped between them. "Uncle, you cannot mean to entertain the claims of a woman who broke into a locked room. Evelyn entered a room containing papers about her own property. She trespassed. In my house." Percival fell silent. The correction was quiet. It struck harder than a shout. The Duke turned toward Mr. Alden. "I was informed that you retired." Mr. Alden stood straighter, though his injured hand shook. "I was informed of it as well, Your Grace." Several guests looked toward Mr. Crane. The estate steward shifted near the wall. The Duke's eyes rested upon the bruise on the old butler's face. "Who did that?" Mr. Alden hesitated. Mr. Crane answered before he could speak. "The old man resisted lawful care." "Lawful under whose authority?" Lady Drusilla intervened. Alden had become confused. We acted for his protection. Mr. Alden looked at her. For 42 years, my lady, I remembered every key in this house, every guest who required a fire, every child who feared the dark, and every debt that was quietly removed from a gentleman's supper account. I became confused only when I refused to forget what I had heard. The corridor went still. The Duke spoke gently. Then tell me what you heard. Mr. Alden looked at Evelyn. She gave the smallest nod. 3 nights before Mr. Marlowe died, I heard him accuse Lord Percival of taking money from the estate. He said Mr. Vane approved false leases in your Grace's name. He intended to send the accounts to London. Percival laughed once. A servant listening at doors. An old servant, Mr. Alden replied, is often treated like furniture. Furniture hears a great deal. A few guests shifted uncomfortably. The Duke did not smile. What happened to the letter? Mr. Alden looked toward Clara, who stood among the servants in the corridor. The girl went pale. Evelyn saw fear pass through her. Clara's hands closed around her apron. Mr. Crane noticed her and took 1 step forward. Clara moved back. The old belief returned to her face. No magistrate would believe a kitchen maid against a gentleman. Then Lady Honoria spoke. Let the girl come forward. Every face turned toward her. Percival stared. Honoria, this is not your concern. It became my concern when you intended to announce our engagement tonight. Her voice trembled once, then steadied. If a kitchen maid's word is too low to hear, mine may be high enough to require silence while she speaks. That was the opening. Not from the Duke, not from Evelyn. From the woman Percival had expected to purchase with respectability. Clara stepped into the library. For the first time in her life, she stood before titled guests without carrying a tray. Her knees trembled. Her voice did not. I saw Lord Percival burn a letter addressed to his Grace. Mr. Crane came into the servants' hall. Lord Percival said Mr. Marlowe would ruin them if the accounts reached London. Percival's face reddened. The girl was dismissed for stealing sugar. I never stole anything. You were seen near the pantry, because my shawl was there. Mr. Crane pointed at her. This is rehearsed. Clara flinched. Evelyn stepped beside her. No. Rehearsal makes speech smoother. Truth sometimes shakes. Clara drew a breath. Mr. Crane said Mr. Marlowe would sign nothing after another dose. Lady Drusilla's fan snapped shut. Dose of what? Clara shook her head. I do not know. Percival seized upon the uncertainty. There. She knows nothing. A second voice came from the corridor. I may know more. Dr. Silas Crowther stood behind the guests. He had entered unnoticed, his face pale beneath thinning hair. Until that moment, he had remained near the dining room, apparently hoping the confusion would pass without reaching him. Percival stared at him. Doctor, be careful. Dr. Crowther looked toward the Duke. I was summoned to Mr. Marlowe 2 days before his death. He had been given laudanum. The room seemed to contract around the word. Lady Drusilla lifted her chin. For pain. The amount was greater than I prescribed. You cannot prove that. No, my lady, because the bottle disappeared before I returned the next morning. Mr. Vane spoke sharply. Then you have nothing useful to add. Dr. Crowther looked at him. I witnessed the transfer. Evelyn felt the air leave her lungs. The physician continued. Mr. Marlowe could not state the date. He asked repeatedly why his daughter had ignored his letters. His hand slipped from the pen twice. And you signed as witness? The Duke asked. Dr. Crowther looked down. I did. Why? No answer came. Percival spoke for him. Because the document was valid. Dr. Crowther's face tightened. Because I owed Lord Percival £900. Lady Honoria's father turned toward Percival. 900? A private matter, Percival said. Not any more, the Duke replied. Dr. Crowther looked at Evelyn. I told myself the dose merely calmed your father. I told myself he understood enough. I told myself the signature would prevent a scandal. Not one lie, Evelyn thought. 3. Each one smaller than the truth, and together large enough to ruin a life. Did the laudanum kill him? She asked. Dr. Crowther swallowed. I cannot say. His heart was weak. The dose may have hastened his death, or it may not have done so. Lady Drusilla seized the words. Then there was no murder. Evelyn looked at her. No one has accused you of murder. Not yet, Lady Drusilla replied. The mistake was immediate. The room heard it. Lady Drusilla heard it herself. Her face lost colour. The Duke turned slowly. Why did you say not yet? She opened her fan again. Because that is where these wild accusations lead. No, Evelyn said. That is where your fear led. Percival moved toward her. Enough. The Duke raised one hand. Mr. Crane, unlock the door. The steward did not move. Unlock it. The key turned. A footman entered with the magistrate, followed by two men from the Duke's London office. One carried a ledger case. The other held a writing portfolio. The magistrate bowed. Your Grace. The Duke indicated Mr. Vane's leather case. That is to remain in the room. Mr. Vane gripped the handle. It contains confidential papers. The magistrate looked at him. Then confidentiality may be established after ownership. Vane turned toward the door. The two London clerks blocked his path. No violence was required. No one raised a fist. The simple closing of an exit made his power disappear. For the first time in her life, Evelyn saw a man who had controlled families through ink discover that paper could also restrain him. The magistrate opened the leather case. Inside were two ledgers, 3 folded agreements, and a sealed packet marked for the Duke's signature. The first ledger belonged to Greyhaven. The second bore the accounts of Evelyn's 2 farms. Mr. Vane spoke quickly. Those are working copies. One of the Duke's clerks opened the Greyhaven ledger. These entries do not match the rents recorded in London. The other clerk examined the farm accounts. Nor do these. The magistrate unfolded the first agreement. A transfer of trust property from Mr. Marlowe to Lord Percival Grey. Evelyn looked at the signature. Her father's name slanted weakly across the page. Beside it stood the names of Dr. Crowther and Mr. Crane. The magistrate read the date. Mr. Bellamy's written objection was prepared the same day, the Duke said. Mr. Vane's face hardened. An objection does not invalidate a signature. No, Evelyn replied, but incapacity, concealed medication, debt held over a witness, and the suppression of a trust deed may do so. The magistrate looked at her with brief surprise. Mr. Bellamy explained it carefully. You have seen him? Yes. Where is he? Safe. It was the only answer she gave. The magistrate continued through the case. False lease approvals. Letters bearing the Duke's copied signature. Tenant agreements with altered rents. Receipts for coal never delivered. Each item had been prepared by a different hand, but the pattern joined them. Money had moved from tenants to Crane. From Crane to Percival. From Percival to Vane. Not once. Repeatedly. The Duke faced his secretary. How long? Vane remained silent. The Duke's clerk answered, At least 3 years, Your Grace. 3 years. The distance long enough for relatives to become strangers, long enough for theft to look like order, long enough for a frightened daughter to believe she had been forgotten. Lady Honoria removed the ring Percival had given her privately that afternoon. She placed it upon the desk. Our engagement will not be announced. Percival stared at her. You cannot abandon me over the claims of servants and clerks. I abandon you because you still believe their rank matters more than the truth. Her father offered his arm. She did not take it. She walked from the library alone. The guests stepped aside for her. Percival turned toward the Duke. Uncle, whatever mistakes were made, this can be resolved within the family. The Duke looked at the magistrate, the ledgers, Clara, and Mr. Alden. It ceased to be a private family matter when tenants paid for coal they never received. Mr. Crane spoke for the first time since the case was opened. Lord Percival instructed me. Percival turned on him. You altered the books, at your direction. Mr. Vane gave the approvals. Vane's mouth twisted. And who enjoyed the money, Crane? Did the steward's new house build itself? Their alliance broke in moments, not from conscience, from fear. Each man reached for the next, as though another person's guilt could lessen his own. Lady Drusilla remained near the fireplace. She had said nothing since the leather case was opened. The Duke turned toward her. Did you intercept Evelyn's letters? Lady Drusilla's eyes moved toward Percival. Mother, he said quietly, it was not a command. It was a plea. She looked at Evelyn. Your father was weak. Each letter made him hesitate. Percival needed the transfer completed before the accounts were examined. "So you burned my letters?" "Some. And the letters my father sent to me." Lady Drusilla's voice lowered. "Some." Evelyn felt the old pain rise again. Not the pain of losing property. The pain of years, stolen from two people who had each believed the other silent. Why? Because your return would have changed his mind. That was the plainest truth Lady Drusilla had spoken. The Duke's expression turned cold. "You will leave Greyhaven tonight." Lady Drusilla stared at him. "You cannot send me away before these people. I can do little else before them. Where shall I go? You have a widow's income and a house in Sussex. It is hardly suitable." Mr. Alden looked toward the servants gathered in the corridor. Neither was the room chosen for Miss Evelyn. No one laughed. The consequence needed no laughter. Lady Drusilla looked at the faces around her. Women who had once sought her invitations would not meet her eyes. Men who had praised Percival's prospects moved quietly away from him. The doors of society had not closed yet, but everyone in the room had heard the hinges move. The magistrate ordered the ledgers, agreements, and letters secured. Mr. Vane, Mr. Crane, and Dr. Crowther were told to remain available for formal inquiry. Percival was not arrested that night. His punishment began more slowly. The Duke removed him from all estate business before the guests. The engagement ended. His accounts were frozen pending examination. Every pound taken from Evelyn's trust and the Greyhaven tenants was to be restored where possible. In the weeks that followed, invitations ceased arriving. Men who had once accepted his wine no longer offered their hands. Lady Drusilla departed for Sussex beneath a cold morning sky. No footman stood in ceremonial dress. No guests gathered to wish her well. She left through the main door, yet it felt smaller than the servants' entrance had ever felt to Evelyn. Before she entered the carriage, Lady Drusilla asked to speak with her alone. They met in the garden. Winter had stripped the hedges bare. Frost silvered the path. No one else stood within hearing. It was the only place in Greyhaven where tenderness had ever been allowed to arrive without witnesses. Lady Drusilla wore plain black. "I did what I believed necessary for my son. You did what was profitable for him. A mother may confuse the two. A mother may also choose not to." Lady Drusilla looked toward the frozen fountain. "I am sorry for the letters." Evelyn waited. For the first time, Lady Drusilla seemed unable to arrange her face into superiority. "I did not think your father would die so soon. That does not return the years before he died. No, nor does it erase what happened to Mr. Alden, Clara, the tenants, or me. No." Lady Drusilla's voice weakened. "Can you forgive me?" Evelyn looked at the woman who had once made an entire ballroom laugh at her. Forgiveness offered too quickly would have been another performance. "I may one day stop carrying anger for you," she said. "That is not the same as restoring you to my life." Lady Drusilla closed her eyes. "I understand." Evelyn believed she did. That was enough. She did not embrace her. She did not condemn her. She stepped aside and allowed her to leave. Mr. Bellamy returned to London after the Duke guaranteed that his evidence would be heard. Dr. Crowther lost the confidence of the families who had once employed him and was required to answer for his part in the invalid transfer. Mr. Crane's property was examined against the missing estate funds. Horace Vane faced the most serious inquiry. His false approvals and copied signatures extended beyond Greyhaven. Other estates began opening their books. Percival lost the farms, the trust money, his position, and the future he had expected to purchase through Lady Honoria. Months later, he wrote to Evelyn. The letter contained an apology. It also contained explanations, excuses, and a request that she ask the Duke to restore a small allowance. Evelyn read it once. Then she placed it unanswered inside a drawer. Silence had once been used against her. Now it belonged to her by choice. The Duke restored Evelyn's trust and the income from the 2 farms. He offered her rooms at Greyhaven and a place within his household. She thanked him. Then she declined. Instead, Evelyn rented a modest house near the village market. The front room became an office where she kept accounts for shopkeepers, widows, tenants, and small landholders. The room behind it held a bed for patients who needed overnight care but could not afford a private nurse. Clara became her assistant. She learned figures quickly, and wrote a strong, clear hand. Mrs. Finch sent preserves each winter. Mrs. Wren continued sewing near the window and complained whenever anyone called her generous. Mr. Alden occupied the room overlooking the small garden. He insisted upon answering the door. His hand never fully stopped trembling, but he could still recognize every visitor by the sound of a knock. The Duke came often. At first, his visits concerned the restored accounts. Later, he came without ledgers. He never forgot that Evelyn had been the only person in a crowded ballroom to step forward when the old butler began to fall. He also never forgot that Mr. Alden had carried the truth when more powerful men had sold it. One winter evening, nearly a year after the engagement dinner, Evelyn returned from the market carrying bread, tea, lamp oil, apples, and a small jar of marmalade. Snow rested upon the garden wall. Inside, Clara balanced a ledger. Mrs. Wren argued with the kettle. Mr. Alden sat beside the fire, polishing a silver button from his old Greyhaven coat. The Duke stood near the window, waiting for Evelyn to remove her wet gloves. No chandelier hung above them. No music played. No one watched from behind a fan. The room was small, warm, and entirely honest. Mr. Alden looked at the basket in Evelyn's arms. "You have forgotten the seed cake." Evelyn set the bread upon the table. "Then you must survive without luxury. At my age?" He shook his head gravely. "Cruelty has returned to the house." Clara laughed. This time, Evelyn laughed with her. The sound filled the little room and remained there, not triumph over those who had fallen, belonging among those who had stood. In the end, Greyhaven remembered titles, money, scandal, and shame. But the Duke remembered one hand reaching for an old servant when every other hand had remained still. Kindness is never wasted. If Evelyn's courage moved you, please like this story, subscribe to the channel, and support us so we can continue sharing tales where truth restores dignity and quiet kindness changes lives.